everybody. This is Mrs. Bashman, your art teacher, and today we are going to take a look at using colored pencils. So let's take a look at some of the tools that we're going to be using. These are Prismacolor colored pencils. I really like this brand. I highly recommend it. They're a little bit on the pricey side and can run about $1 a pencil, but if you can afford to get a pack of these are the best, and these are the kind that I always use when I'm making my pictures. You will need a pack of colored pencils, some different types of erasers. We have our kneaded eraser, which you can clean by stretching. This is a great eraser because you can form it into shapes. It also helps lift up just a little bit of your pencil at a time. You have a standard rubber eraser, which you can get in various shapes and sizes. This is a stick eraser, which is a little bit thinner, gets you some nice detail. Electric erasers, which I think are fantastic. Then you will need various things to blend with. We have your standard blending stump and some sandpaper to help clean it. The sandpaper is critical because if you are starting with one color on your blending stump and then you go to another color, you don't want to mix those colors together. You got to make sure that you're cleaning your blending stump off in between colors. So this is great. It's just a little sandpaper paddle. It has several pieces of sandpaper, so when you're done with the first one, you can just rip that off, throw it away, and go right to the next piece of sandpaper and continue cleaning your blending stump off. You'll also need a pencil sharpener. I never recommend using electric pencil sharpeners for your Prismacolor colored pencils because they have a tendency to vibrate and break the lead within the pencil, so then when you go to sharpen it, your pencil is going to fall out. So I just find it's much easier to use a standard metal pencil sharpener for that. Let's talk a little bit about the paper that we're going to be using. For sketches and doing stuff in your sketchbook, any type of drawing paper will work, and we're going to be using a regular piece of drawing paper for this. However, with drawings, I prefer to use something with a little bit more sturdiness to it, either Bristol board or illustration board. Illustration board is my go-to tool when I'm doing drawings. It's nice and sturdy and thick. It can take a lot of abuse as far as blending and layering your colors together. So this is what I recommend when you're ready to do a nice finished piece. Okay, let's see. When we are using the colored pencils, you are rarely going to start out with the color that you want. So you're going to be doing a lot of layering and blending to get the exact shades that you're looking for. When you're holding your colored pencil like you would a regular pencil, like when you would sign your name or draw, you're going to get very thin lines. However, a lot of the time we're doing broad areas of color. Instead of holding it that way to use the tip of the pencil, you're going to hold it so that you're using the length of the lead. So all of the, well, not lead because it's not made out of lead, but all of this part of the pencil, the edge, is touching the surface. So you see how you get a much broader area of color than if you do it like this, where you end up with lines. And you may not want to see lines. So I recommend using the edge, not the tip, for large areas of color. Again, like I was saying, we're not always going to start out with the color we want. We're going to be doing a lot of layering. So we'll start out with one layer and then add another layer and then add another layer. Sometimes you'll be changing colors along the way and so on. So you're going to build up in order to create a smooth, even surface without any streaks, lines, or waxy buildup. So there are 3 ways that you can blend your colored pencils, and you're going to do all of these for your sketchbook. So for the first way to blend is with the blending stump. So we're going to label that. The second way to blend is with this tool right here. This is called a colorless blender. All it is a tube of the wax substrate that your colored pencils are made out of without any pigment, so it's just clear. Some people love this. They love to blend with the colorless blender. I don't particularly like it as much. I prefer the blending stump, but some people love it. So it is called the colorless blender. The third way is to blend with white or a lighter version of whatever color it is that you are using. We're going to say white is our third way to blend. So for this demonstration, I'm going to start with yellow. I'm going to sharpen my pencil a little bit so that I have a nice edge on it. I'm going to hold it loosely in my hand like this. I use my pointer finger to get some pressure, and I use the edge, not the tip, to start out with a nice layer of yellow in my box here for my demonstration. Notice I'm not making it solid yet. I'm just giving a nice even coating within my box. I see a little bit of white paper, but not a whole lot, just a little bit. All right, so I have an even amount of yellow in all of my boxes. I'm going to take my red and sharpen it a little bit. So I have a nice broad area. Again, I'm holding it in my hand like this, using my pointer finger to help direct it, using the edge. Red is much stronger than yellow. So I'm going to use less pressure and get a nice even coat in all three of my boxes. I'm not really caring about going over the edges here. This is just for demonstration purposes. It's fine if it's a little messy. It's all right. Okay, so we have three even boxes. We have a layer of yellow underneath and a layer of red on top. So the first way to blend is with the blending stump. You're going to be using a little more pressure with this, so you can hold it like a color pen or like a regular pencil if you're writing, or you can hold it just like you were with the using the edge, not the tip. And I recommend going in circles, applying pressure and spinning around. I'm pressing pretty hard. And my goal is to make this look like an even orange instead of chunky areas of yellow and red. So that is blended with the blending stump. Now I want to make sure that I clean this off because I don't want to get yellow and red onto whatever I'm doing next. Then I'm going to use the colorless blender. Again, I'm going to hold it like I did with the blending stump, spinning in different directions, going in circles. Now instantly you're going to notice the difference between the blending stump and the colorless blender. You see all these little pieces, these little dusty pieces that are coming off? What's happening is the colorless blender is pushing some of the wax up off of the page. So it's removing some of the red. I like the blending stump a little bit better because even though some of the color comes off on the blending stump, not nearly as much as it does with the colorless blender. So I don't like the way that this is kind of chunky. That's just my personal deal. You may like the way that the colorless blender works for you. It's really just, an artist's preference. The next is blending with white or the lightest color that you're using. If you use white to blend, you're always going to end up with a slight tint of whatever color you're using. So if I didn't want this orange to be tinted, I would use the yellow to go back and blend these colors together. So you see how this is a tint and these are more of a pure orange. Just like the colorless blender, because I was pressing hard, it's picking up a little bit of this dust, but not as much as when you use the colorless blender. So try them out, see which one works best for you. Maybe it's a combination depending on what you're doing, but these are the three main ways to blend your color pencil, using the blending stump, the colorless blender, or white or a light colored pencil. All right, so let's start with some of the ways to apply your color pencil. The first thing that we're going to look at is just straight up shading. Just like when you're using an ebony or graphite pencil, you can apply extremely heavy pressure and then lighten the pressure as you go along. So you can start out with a very dark value and end up with a very light value, just based on how much pressure that you're using and how many layers that you apply. You can also do hatching and cross hatching to create value. So for hatching, The closer the lines are to one another, the darker the value is going to appear. The further away the lines are from another, the lighter the value is going to appear. So this is when you want to see lines. So maybe you're doing hatching as you're shading, or you're using lines in a texture. You want to keep that in mind as one of your tools. Cross hatching, you can do this with one color or two colors. I'm going to do it with two just so you can see what it does to blend with your eye. Cross hatching, you go in opposite directions from one another. I'm going to switch to the blue. These lines are perpendicular, kind of like a plaid pattern. And what that's going to do is visually blend these colors together so that when you're viewing them, instead of seeing just red and blue, you'll start to see violet. Now, just like with hatching, you're still going to see the lines, you're still going to see texture. If you don't want that to happen, there's several things that you can do. So this method is called scumbling, S-C-U-M-B-L-I-N-G, scumbling. It's also called the scribble method or the Brillo pad method. This is the method that you use if you want to get smooth, even tone where you really don't want to see some lines. This is the method I use for skin tone. So for the Brillo pad method, you're going to start holding your pencil like we did, where we're using the edge, not the tip, and you're going to go in circles or ovals, and you're going to move around in this circular motion. Tiny tornadoes, you'll hear me say that often, tiny tornadoes. So there's a little bit of yellow. I'm gonna go in here with my red. Tiny tornadoes. Tiny tornadoes. Here towards the outside, I'm going to leave it looser just so you can see that circular motion that I'm making. The more you layer it, the denser and smoother it's going to be. So I have a nice, dense, even color here in the middle, and then out here I left it a little open so you can see the lines of that Brillo pad method or that scumbling method. This is the method that you're going to use most often with the colored pencils if you're using if you don't want to see any lines. Most people do either a cross hatching method or a scumbling method. That's just how you naturally apply a colored pencil to the page. All right, now we're going to learn how to do directional marks. Directional marks are when you want to see the lines. This is if you're doing something like hair, grass, flames, anything of that nature. I'm going to do a flame, so I want to have a nice curved shape. I want my lines to be nice and curved, following the directions of the contours of whatever it is I'm coloring in. Started with yellow, I layered red on top of it. Now I'm going in and I'm burnishing it with the yellow. So you can still see those lines. I'll show you how I would do grass. So for grass, I like to use almost cross-hatching method. And I layer it, and I layer it, and then I'd switch colors, and I'd layer it some more. Kind of like that. So directional marks, that's going to be a really good tool in your arsenal for creating realistic color pencil drawings. Then incised marks. Incised, I-N-C-I-S-E-D, incised. So because we have layers of wax with colored pencils, you can achieve this very interesting effect. You start with a layer of a lighter color, nice dense layer of yellow here. I'm going to apply a layer of red over top of it. Pretty dense. All right. Now you're going to use a sharp tool. I have here a wooden skewer and a little metal stick. And because we have layers of wax, what we're going to do is we're going to scratch up that first layer so that you can see the layer underneath of it. You can accomplish this with your fingernail, but some people don't like that. So the wooden skewer is a little bit less effective, I'm finding, than the metal. So there you can see I've scratched up the layer of red and I can see the layer of yellow. So if you happen to be making a color and you've got a little bit too much of the color on top, it's easy to just pull that layer back and then continue coloring. Then you have burnishing, which we've been doing. You just didn't know that was the term for it. So burnishing is another term that refers to layers of colored pencil overlaid with strong pressure so that the tooth of the paper is filled in and you get a smooth surface. You shouldn't see any white paper at all. This is as far as you can layer it. If you try and push past this point, you will end up with what I call waxy boogers. It's those little bits of colored pencil that just float off the page, and it makes your colors look chunky. It's just not attractive anymore. So it'll just take a little bit of practice to discover how far you can push your colored pencils before you've gotten to that point. So I'm going to start with a lighter layer of yellow, apply some of my red, and then apply some more of my yellow in a different direction. So you notice here it's pretty solid. It's a nice orange. I'm not seeing any white. Now if I try and continue and I press and I keep moving this around, you're gonna start to see that there's areas of yellow and areas of red. It's not even anymore. It's not pretty. See, I'm pushing so hard I'm even breaking the colors. So it just takes a little bit of practice. That's why we're gonna be doing a color wheel and then a small project before we get to your large colored pencil project. So let me talk a little bit about different types of paper as well that you can use. I'd like you to try these two little scraps of paper. One is a dark paper and the other one is a textured paper. So I'm going to sharpen my poor abused yellow colored pencil here. Didn't mean to break you, I'm sorry. So try out some of your lighter colors just to see how they are affected on a dark surface as opposed to a light surface. And do the same thing with the textured paper. Because this paper has a little bit of a tooth to it, the colored pencil doesn't cover all of it, so you're going to have a little bit of some negative space there underneath of the colored pencil. So you want to test out one of the black chips of paper and one of the textured chips of paper, and then you can just glue that right here at the bottom on your sketchbook page. So to test out different ways of using colored pencil, just to review, we've done the 3 ways of applying: blending stump, colorless blender, and white, and make sure you've labeled them all. You're going to try shading from dark to light, hatching from dark to light, cross hatching, try using 2 different colors, scumbling, directional marks, incised marks, burnishing, a dark piece of paper, and a textured piece of paper. And that is your crash course in how to use colored pencil.